Standing by a mysterious, gaping hole not marked on his map, Akira reported to headquarters that he had discovered a large cavity. He speculated that this might be where the scorpions that had overrun Checkpoint 15 originated. Reina was taken aback by the revelation. She hadn't expected Akira to divert his search to this spot, and she wondered how he had known to check here. Headquarters responded that they had a visual on the hole Akira was referring to and explained that it led to an area they hadn't cleared yet. They warned him that there were likely multiple scorpion nests inside. Akira agreed with this assessment but decided that his search was complete, indicating he would return to Checkpoint 14. However, HQ insisted he stay put, explaining that they needed to establish a new checkpoint beyond the hole. They instructed him to hold the position until additional personnel arrived. Akira protested, arguing that it was unreasonable to expect him to fend off the monsters alone. HQ countered that, as security, temporarily holding positions was part of his job. With little choice, Akira begrudgingly agreed, sitting down on the ground as Reina and Shiori watched him. Shiori reflected on the earlier events and regretted underestimating Akira's competence. She had assumed he would back down under her intimidation, and she was left pondering what might have happened if Reina hadn't intervened. This led her to some serious self-reflection. Reina was also troubled by Akira's words. She questioned whether she had fully considered the consequences of her actions and the potential violence she had instigated. Akira's words made her question her own decisions, and she couldn't fault him for his stance. Shiori approached Reina, telling her not to dwell too much on what happened earlier since she was equally at fault. Reina then remembered she hadn't properly thanked Shiori lately and apologized for the trouble she had caused. She expressed her gratitude for Shiori's intervention and asked if she could count on her help in the future. Shiori was taken aback by Reina's sudden change of attitude. She immediately assured Reina that she could depend on her. The heartfelt apology made Shiori blush with happiness. Meanwhile, Akira pointed his rifle into the big hole, catching Reina and Shiori's attention as he aimed menacingly inside. He asked Alpha how many creatures were in the hole. Alpha informed him that 124 scorpions were within scanner range and more were approaching. Akira was bemused by his consistent run of bad luck, feeling like he always drew the short straw. Alpha advised him to get used to it and stay calm. Akira agreed and prepared for action. Reina then asked if Akira's scanner detected any threats. He assured her he would handle the hole and instructed Reina and Shiori to monitor the passage. Shiori launched flares, asking Reina to report what she saw as the flares illuminated the dark, cold room. As the light from the flares faded, the situation seemed quiet, but Alpha quickly alerted Akira to the approaching threat. Large numbers of Urata scorpions were crawling toward them. Alpha began a countdown, and as it reached 0, Akira fired his rifle. The shot was devastating, cutting through the scorpions with precision and power, the bullets piercing through them in a single volley. Akira was impressed by the ammo's effectiveness, even if it was costly. Alpha informed him that it was fortunate that the ammo was effective at long range as well. She advised him to use it freely and eliminate as many scorpions as possible. As Akira fired those hard-hitting rounds, Reina was in awe. Every shot he took sent his entire body reeling backward, yet his stance remained rock solid. Even more impressive, his aim never wavered. It was like watching a kid fire a .50 caliber rifle with no tripod, and not flinch. Reina couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had no idea Akira was capable of such a feat. She asked why on earth he'd bring something as powerful as the CWH proprietary cartridges down into the hole. Akira explained that he had to pack the best ammo he could get, but Reina didn't quite understand. That type of expensive ammunition seemed wasted on Urata scorpions. How could he turn a profit with that kind of overhead? Akira revealed that his client footed the bill for the ammo. He had included it as a condition for accepting the job, thinking it might get him out of this mess early. Reina was stunned. She couldn't believe his client agreed to cover such expensive cartridges. Akira further explained that he wouldn't have been there at all if they hadn't. Now that he thought about it, his client must have known he'd end up in this kind of situation. Shiori suddenly noticed something. Another group of Urata scorpions. She quickly dispatched them, which shocked Reina. Where had they come from? Reina wondered aloud if there were more holes. Shiori simply told her to get ready. Akira chimed in, saying that these scorpions must belong to a different group from the ones that had attacked Checkpoint 15. Now, they were just returning home. With his hands full, Akira shouted for them to figure something out. Despite her lack of confidence, Reina promised she'd come up with a solution. Akira, clearly desperate, told her he was counting on her. He emphasized that he meant it. He really needed her to make this work. Reina was taken aback, but those words bolstered her confidence. As she readied her rifle, she began to feel more capable. As she fired at the Urata scorpions from the sides, she realized how crucial her support was. Akira may have been an incredible fighter, but even he knew when to ask for backup. With her newfound confidence, taking out those scorpions became a piece of cake. Shiori noticed this sudden transformation. She never imagined Miss Reina could fight so well. Maybe Shiori had underestimated her all along, but she still wondered what had caused Reina to bloom so suddenly. As the battle raged on, hundreds of Urata scorpions lay dead on the ground. Alpha informed Akira that he had wiped out every enemy within scanning range and praised him for a job well done. Akira immediately contacted HQ, demanding to know where the reinforcements were, as he hadn't seen any yet. HQ responded that they had already been dispatched to his position and asked if they hadn't arrived. Frustrated, Akira shouted that they were nowhere to be found and told HQ to hurry up. Exhausted, Akira plopped down onto the ground, lamenting the small fortune he had just spent on proprietary ammo. He nervously asked Alpha if the client was going to demand reimbursement later. He was starting to feel like he might be getting scammed. Alpha reassured him, saying he would be fine. She thought. Akira panicked, asking if she wasn't sure. Alpha cheekily responded that since she didn't work for the city, how could she be certain? She teased him, saying, "What if the city doesn't pay us?" Sweat dripped from Akira's brow as he begged Alpha to tell him he had nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, inside the massive hole, Reina and Shiori surveyed the area. With hundreds of dead Urata scorpions scattered around, Reina could barely hide her disgust. Shiori noticed and offered to investigate the hole alone, suggesting that Reina wait outside. But Reina, gritting her teeth, stammered that she was fine and insisted on helping Shiori out. Despite her disgust, Reina knew that if she wanted to be a hunter, she had to get used to situations like this. Her determination and resolve pleased Shiori. Meanwhile, Akira wandered the hallway, looking at the piles of Urata scorpion corpses. He couldn't believe they had swarmed the entire corridor like that. It had been a closer call than he'd thought. Without Reina and Shiori's help, he might have been toast. Alpha chimed in, reminding him that every scorpion was killed before getting anywhere near him. This only confirmed how skilled Reina and Shiori were. Akira asked if he could have handled it without their help, but Alpha reassured him that, with her full support, he probably could have pulled it off. That didn't seem to make him feel much better, though. He sighed, realizing this whole job was way out of his league. It was clear now, he'd bitten off more than he could chew. After a while, Katsuya and his team, along with other hunters, finally arrived. Alpha mentioned that his backup had shown up. Better late than never. Akira then approached Shiori to discuss his job. While things hadn't gone exactly as planned, he asked if his part was done now. Shiori bowed slightly, thanked him for his work, and agreed that his job was complete. Reina called out to Akira, but he simply ignored her and walked off. Katsuya's team noticed and raised an eyebrow as they watched him leave. Akira reported back to HQ, who informed him they had reviewed his combat logs but had a few questions. Akira immediately cut them off, shouting that he wasn't paying for the ammo. To his relief, HQ said that wasn't the issue. If his results didn't match his expenses, they'd just terminate his contract instead of billing him. That didn't sound particularly comforting either, but at least he wasn't getting scammed on ammo costs. As for his bonus, HQ said they couldn't precisely count how many scorpions he'd taken down in the chaos. So, they had decided to calculate his pay based on an estimate of his team's total kill count. They asked how he wanted to handle this. Akira, not wanting any nonsense, told them to tally up whatever they wanted, mashed scorpions included, and divide the total by 3. HQ, surprised by his suggestion, asked if he was sure. Akira fired back, asking if there was a problem with that. HQ reassured him there was no issue. They just wanted to double check. With that settled, they agreed to divide the kill count by 3, and warned him not to complain about it later. With that, they ended the call. Later, Reina, Shiori, and Katsuya's team approached Akira. Reina mentioned that HQ had just explained how the payment would work. They told her that each person would get credit for a third of the kills, and she asked Akira if that was right. Akira confirmed it was true since it's what he had told HQ. Reina stared at him in silence. Akira, catching on, decided to get ahead of things. He told her that if she was trying to claim all the credit because he had been hired to support her, there was no way he'd agree to that. But Reina surprised him by saying it was actually the opposite. This confused Akira, as he wasn't sure what she meant by the opposite. Reina explained that since Akira had taken out most of the swarm by himself, she was wondering if he was really okay with splitting the pay equally. Akira admitted that while it was true he had killed more, it still made sense to divide it evenly. The 3 of them had been responsible for the kills, after all, and besides, his client was covering his ammo costs, which was a bonus for him. In the end, even though he had handled the bulk of the fighting, Reina had watched his back the whole time. Everyone had their own roles to play, and they each did their job. That's all that really mattered. Akira asked if Reina had any issues with the arrangement. While she didn't necessarily have a problem, she still felt that splitting everything 3 ways didn't sit right with her. Before things could escalate, Shiori stepped in, reminding Reina that they hadn't lost anything in the process. Since Akira was satisfied with the outcome, Shiori suggested dropping the matter. After all, arguing over nothing could lead to unnecessary conflict. Reina realized the sense in Shiori's words and agreed, while Akira nodded in approval, also not wanting to drag things out any further. Akira then turned to Shiori, asking if there was anything else she needed from him. Shiori confirmed there was nothing more and thanked him for his time. Reina looked at Akira, clearly wanting to say more, but unable to find the resolve to speak up. Something was holding her back. Katsuya, having noticed Reina's odd behavior since earlier, decided to step in. He approached Akira and politely asked about the support job he'd mentioned earlier. Without missing a beat, Akira told him to ask Reina about it himself. His bluntness caught Katsuya and his team off guard. Katsuya, trying to remain civil, explained that since he was part of the team, he wanted to understand what had happened while they were separated. But Akira wasn't interested in entertaining the conversation. He repeated that Katsuya should ask Reina or Shiori instead, not him. This response visibly irritated Katsuya. Katsuya pressed further, asking if there was a reason Akira couldn't just tell him directly or if there was something he was hiding. Akira shot him a glare and repeated once again that Katsuya should ask them and not him, shutting down the conversation entirely. The atmosphere grew tense as Akira and Katsuya locked eyes, each refusing to back down. Katsuya suspected something had happened between Akira, Reina, and Shiori. Akira's reasoning was simple. He and Shiori had almost killed each other, so it was better to leave it to Reina and Shiori to decide whether they wanted to share the details. He didn't feel it was his place to explain anything. Yumina, observing the tension between the two, knew she had to step in before things got out of hand. But Katsuya's concern for Reina made it difficult to come up with the right thing to say to defuse the situation. With a quick, somewhat rushed plan, Yumina stepped between them, telling Katsuya it was time to go. While looking down at Akira, she remarked that Katsuya shouldn't waste his time on someone like him. Katsuya was surprised at her boldness. Yumina explained that they still didn't know Akira well enough, and blindly trusting his words could easily lead to misunderstandings. Katsuya saw her point but still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Akira's behavior seemed suspicious, but Yumina reminded him that it would be quicker and more reliable to ask their teammates directly. Irie also joined in, backing up Yumina's suggestion. With 2 against 1, Katsuya reluctantly agreed to leave. As Yumina turned back to Akira, who was already walking away, she suddenly bowed sincerely toward him. Akira noticed, but by the time he turned back, she had already rushed off to rejoin her teammates. Alpha commented that Yumina had handled the situation perfectly, saving them from any more unnecessary trouble. Akira agreed, feeling relieved that things hadn't escalated. But the gesture puzzled him. Why had she bowed? Had she used that tone deliberately to stop them from fighting? Reflecting on it, Akira wondered if simply saying, "Nothing much," might have avoided all this pointless tension. Alpha cut into his thoughts, reminding him that he had been down there for 8 hours, and his shirt was now covered in grime. She suggested he contact HQ. This lifted Akira's spirits, and he quickly reached out to HQ. Alpha then praised him for surviving another day, noting that with 1 day down, he only had 6 more to go. She encouraged him to keep it up. The next day, Akira returned for the Urata Scorpion's extermination job. He thought about how he had run out of special CWH ammo yesterday but felt confident that what he had brought today would be enough. The staff who had looked down on him the previous day, identified by their badge number, 27, were waiting for him. They asked what he wanted, reconnaissance or extermination. Akira was confused. Why couldn't he pick security? He would rather do the same job as yesterday. But the staff explained that, after his work yesterday, they decided Akira was too skilled to waste on checkpoint duty. He should be pleased to have impressed someone. Akira could only wish they were impressed by his ability to guard a checkpoint, but the staff didn't care. They told him to make a choice. Alpha then explained that reconnaissance would allow Akira to avoid combat if he scouted well enough, while the extermination team would mean heading into battle with plenty of firepower. If he wanted more predictable work and safety in numbers, extermination was the way to go. Surprisingly, Akira chose reconnaissance. The staff directed him to checkpoint 19 to receive his orders. As Akira walked away, the staff couldn't help but mutter, "Recommended by Kibayashi, munitions reimbursement approved by Kibayashi, placement supervisor." Kibayashi. It had to be that Kibayashi, the one notorious for reckless stunts. The staff couldn't decide whether to envy or pity Akira. Back with Akira, Alpha asked why he chose reconnaissance when extermination seemed like the safer bet to avoid situations like Akira explained that, if he picked extermination, he'd have to fight creatures that required a ton of CWH ammo to take down, and he wasn't too keen on that. Alpha gave him a curious look, prompting Akira to ask what was on her mind. He clarified that dying wouldn't help either of them. Alpha noted that proprietary ammunition was expensive, but buying it in bulk from Shizuka could boost her profits. However, Alpha also predicted that the more Akira bought, the more Shizuka would worry about him. This, in turn, hinted that Akira cared about Shizuka. Alpha asked if she was wrong. Akira's silence spoke volumes, and Alpha smirked knowingly. Silence, after all, often means yes. She didn't have an issue with his decision but suggested that, if he wanted to stop Shizuka from worrying, he should hurry up and improve his skills. Akira agreed. Akira arrived at checkpoint 19, where one of the staff immediately recognized him as 27. The staff mentioned that Akira's recon team was out scouting, so he should keep himself busy. Akira agreed, glancing around, noting that the place was packed with people. Alpha chimed in, suggesting that the checkpoint served as a makeshift base for hunters heading into uncharted territory. As Akira looked around, he spotted Katsuya and his group, along with Reina and Shiori. He figured they had been posted there too, which Alpha confirmed. She quickly advised Akira to avoid interacting with them, predicting a fight if he got too close. Akira reluctantly agreed, knowing Alpha had a point. He wasn't in the mood for unnecessary arguments. After a while, Sarah called out to Akira. He acknowledged her, remarking that it had been a while since they last met. He asked if she and Elena were working jobs down here too. Sarah confirmed and added that she hadn't expected Akira to be the newest member of their team. Akira blinked in confusion. If she said it like that, then the recon team he was joining was. Before he could finish the thought, Sarah signaled for him to follow her. When they reached the group, Elena waved at him, confirming his suspicions. He was now part of Recon Team 9, with Elena as the leader. Akira sarcastically introduced himself, trying to hide his surprise, and said it was a pleasure to work with her today, which earned a shared laugh between them. He then noticed that Elena was wearing the power suit he had seen at Shizuka's store, causing him a bit of embarrassment. Elena welcomed him to the team and reminded him to play it safe if things got dangerous. She noted that Shizuka would be heartbroken if anything happened to him. Akira nodded, appreciating the sentiment, and thanked her in advance. Curious, he asked how many people were on the team. Elena answered that, including him, there were 4 members. Akira was surprised at how small the group was. Sarah explained that they originally planned to have a larger team, but the other members couldn't get along. Just then, a voice behind Akira chimed in, apologizing for the situation. The man said he'd be sure to give H.R. a piece of his mind. The man introduced himself as Shikarabe, part of Recon Team 9, and asked if Akira was the new member. Akira confirmed, introducing himself. Shikarabe seemed happy to have an extra hand but warned that he didn't need any dead weight. He asked Akira if he could pull his own weight. Akira, unfazed, told Shikarabe that HQ sent him, so if he wasn't good enough, Shikarabe could take it up with them. Shikarabe leaned in with a smirk, commenting that Akira didn't sound too confident. He asked if Akira was afraid he didn't have what it took. Akira, without hesitation, admitted that he wasn't skilled enough to guarantee he could handle every situation or always keep the team safe. He acknowledged Shikarabe's point and said he wasn't entirely sure himself. Shikarabe smiled at this and apologized, explaining that he had worked with too many overconfident idiots. At least Akira wasn't one of them, which was a relief. Although Shikarabe doubted Akira was particularly strong, he knew HQ wouldn't send someone who couldn't handle the job. He then asked how long until they'd head out. Elena replied that they'd leave in 5 minutes after she finished transferring data from their last trip. She checked with Akira if the plan worked for him, and Akira confirmed he was ready to go anytime. Alpha suddenly called Akira's attention, confusing him. He glanced in the direction Alpha indicated and saw Katsuya's group, including Reina and Shiori. Shikarabe glared at them while Elena and Sarah sighed. Alpha reminded Akira not to pick any fights. Akira reassured her he wouldn't, doubting that Katsuya would try anything with Elena and Sarah nearby. Elena then asked Shikarabe if she could count on him to handle disputes with other Druncam hunters. Shikarabe agreed and said if there was any trouble, they could send it his way. Sarah whispered to Akira, explaining that when Elena said their team members didn't get along, she was referring to Shikarabe's refusal to work with Katsuya's group. Katsuya suddenly shouted that enough was enough, reminding Shikarabe that he was no longer under his command. He asked if Shikarabe realized how many problems he was causing for Elena and Sarah. Shikarabe cut him off, telling him to shut up and get it through his thick skull that having them around would be worse, and ordered them to leave. Katsuya argued that they couldn't scout such a dangerous area with just 3 people and urged Shikarabe to drop his pride for the sake of their safety. Shikarabe scoffed, informing Katsuya that HQ had found them another member, Akira. He introduced Akira as the guy who fought off a whole swarm the previous day and got HQ's seal of approval. Katsuya glared at Akira, seeing him as an obstacle once again. Katsuya argued that Akira wasn't part of Druncam, but Shikarabe dismissed the complaint, not caring about the affiliation. This enraged Katsuya, who believed Shikarabe should prioritize fellow Druncam hunters when reinforcements were needed. Yumina, meanwhile, was pulling on Katsuya's arm, trying to de-escalate the situation. Shikarabe calmly told Katsuya that he wasn't interested in lugging around dead weight or splitting his pay with them. He added that he didn't blame Katsuya for thinking that way, given his previous experiences. Suddenly, Shikarabe's demeanor changed, and his presence became more intimidating, scaring Yumina. He acknowledged that while Katsuya was a full-fledged hunter now, that didn't make him his equal. He told Katsuya to know his place and back off, clearly asserting dominance. Akira continued to glare at Katsuya, warning him that if he kept getting in his way, he'd consider him an enemy and respond accordingly. Katsuya can only glare, unable to do anything. Before the argument escalated, Elena announced it was time to go. Katsuya could only watch as they left, gritting his teeth. Reina asked Shiori if that's how she acted the day before, and Shiori apologized, saying she might have been even worse. As they continued their scout, a group of Urata scorpions caught their attention, leaving them no choice but to fight. The commotion only attracted more scorpions, forcing them into an extended battle. Alpha, noticing Akira's growing exhaustion, decided it was time to intervene. She thought it might make good training for him, but acknowledged he couldn't handle everything alone just yet. Alpha then cancelled his scouting practice, offering to scan for threats so he could relax a little. Akira was relieved, admitting he couldn't take any more, and thanked her. Shikarabe asked Akira what was happening to his right. Akira replied that there were 3 Urata scorpions about 50 meters away. Since they weren't moving, he guessed they were dead. Even if they were faking, they weren't in the team's path, so they could be ignored. Elena confirmed Akira's assessment was correct, earning him thanks from Shikarabe. Shikarabe, impressed, apologized for doubting him. He thought Akira had started slacking off. Shikarabe muttered that he might be getting rusty, but Akira knew that he's wrong and his instinct is razor sharp. Confused by Shikarabe's sudden change in attitude, asked Alpha how he had figured it out. Alpha explained that Shikarabe's 5 senses and scanner had detected subtle changes in Akira's movements, so he suspected Akira might have been distracted. Since Shikarabe couldn't fully explain it, he chalked it up to instinct. Akira was surprised, but Alpha told him he'd need to develop that same instinct eventually, so he'd better keep working on it. Shikarabe then made a comment that they had added Akira for firepower, but he was proving to be a good scout too, a real jackpot. He even smiled, happy that they had ditched Katsuya for him. However, Elena wasn't as thrilled, wishing that Shikarabe wouldn't drag them into his syndicate's internal disputes. Shikarabe reminded her that she had agreed with his concerns, and Elena caught Akira staring at her as Shikarabe said it. She sighed, admitting that while Katsuya and his team were competent, she couldn't trust them to follow orders in an emergency. Now that Akira knew the situation, Elena made it clear she expected him to follow her orders when the time came. She promised to give clear instructions and explain her reasoning if needed. Akira reassured her, promising to do as he was told, which pleased both Elena and Sarah. As they moved forward, Shikarabe mentioned that cave-ins had blocked a lot of the passages, making the area feel like a maze. He then suggested Akira take point for a while. His reason was simple. He wanted to see how well Akira could fight before they encountered real trouble. Akira didn't mind, but left the final decision to Elena. After a moment of thought, Elena agreed and told Shikarabe to switch places with Akira. She instructed Akira not to do anything reckless, to which he immediately replied that he wouldn't. Elena then told Sarah and Shikarabe to back him up as soon as they thought he was in danger, which they both agreed to. Alpha then asked Akira how much support he wanted her to provide. Akira, not quite understanding, asked for her full assistance. Alpha suggested that if they held back a little now, it might improve his chances of being assigned to security next time. However, this strategy wouldn't be fair to Elena and Sarah. Understanding the situation, Akira requested Alpha's full support, as he didn't want to let his team down. Alpha, already expecting that response, was sure Akira wouldn't disappoint her. As they moved forward, Alpha informed Akira that there were 4 Urata scorpions ahead and advised him to take them out before the creatures noticed them. Following her advice, Akira quickly fired at the targets. Shikarabe raised an eyebrow, impressed by how Akira managed to detect the scorpions at such a distance, assuming he must have a high-end scanner. Elena nodded along, but in truth, she knew the scanner she sold him shouldn't have been capable of detecting enemies from that far away. It made her wonder how he was pulling it off. Was it because he was an old domain user? Curious, she subtly used her contact lens display to scan Akira, trying to pick up any clues. Elena had heard stories of users who could tap into ancient wireless networks to map out and locate ruins. Could Akira be doing something similar? She was intrigued but couldn't just ask him outright. As they continued, they came across a set of stairs leading down to another level. Akira was caught off guard by the sheer number of relics scattered around. Sarah, noticing his reaction, could relate, but she reminded him that taking any of the relics would violate their contract. She also warned him that sneaking a few wouldn't work, speaking from what sounded like personal experience. Elena backed her up, explaining that the fines would be so steep it would take 3 lifetimes to pay them off. Better to just leave the relics where they were. Akira reassured them that they didn't have to worry. He wasn't planning on taking anything. Shikarabe chimed in, adding that anyone who didn't want the city authorities carting off these relics just had to make it down there themselves. He mused aloud that while that might be wishful thinking, it wasn't impossible. Elena shot Shikarabe a look for his comment, and he quickly clarified that he wasn't thinking of stealing anything. He was simply reminded of a rumor from a while back about a seemingly normal kid who brought high-value relics to an exchange. People speculated that there must be an unexplored zone near the city, and a lot of hunters had gone looking for it. Shikarabe asked if the others had heard about it. He suggested that maybe the kid had found relics in an underground store, possibly stumbling upon an entrance while escaping a monster. It wasn't such a far-fetched idea. Elena, however, responded with a frosty tone, telling him he better not be considering smuggling anything out of the ruins. Shikarabe quickly backpedaled, insisting he was just speculating, not plotting a heist. Then, with a smirk, he asked why Elena seemed so uptight about the whole thing. Elena brushed it off, saying they had gone on that wild goose chase too. That was all. Shikarabe, sensing the tension, apologized and asked Akira if he had been part of the same hunt. Akira confirmed that he had. Shikarabe figured something must have gone horribly wrong to make the subject so touchy. For Sarah, some of it had been terrible, but it wasn't all bad. In hindsight, she was glad they went on that expedition. As she spoke, She gazed at the bullet necklace she wore, a memento from that adventure. Back then, she couldn't have said the same, but now, with time to reflect, that's how she felt. She then asked Elena what she thought. Elena took a moment, weighing her thoughts, before admitting that, yes, she was glad they went too. Turning to Akira, Sarah asked for his opinion, adding that she felt like her luck had improved ever since that trip. Elena quickly agreed with her. Shikarabe, now curious, asked Akira how he felt about it. After thinking for a moment, Akira smiled and said he was glad he went too. That was the final straw for Shikarabe, who couldn't help but feel frustrated. He was the only one who seemed to have gained nothing from that adventure. Instead, he had been stuck babysitting a bunch of rookies Druncam had assigned him to, and cleaning up after their messes was a nightmare. Just thinking about it made him fume all over again. Frustrated, Shikarabe told Akira he'd take point, planning to vent his annoyance on the monsters ahead. As they advanced, the team fought through more and more Urata scorpions. Thanks to their tight teamwork and coordination, they managed to fend off the swarms without suffering any casualties. But Shikarabe couldn't help but notice that the hordes were getting bigger and bigger. Curious, he asked Elena if they were nearing a major nest. This prompted Elena to suggest turning back for now. They had already collected plenty of terrain data, and they were about to hit their minimum expedition time anyway. It was a sound decision, and the group quickly agreed. As they made their way back, Elena took a good look around, something gnawing at her. Akira asked if something was wrong, to which Elena pointed out that the passage ahead was blocked by debris, likely from a cave-in. Sarah suggested they just turn around, but Elena hesitated. This wasn't their first detour. They had already taken 3. The idea that another recon team might have set off explosives during a fight, possibly causing the cave-in, crossed their minds. The last thing anyone wanted was to be buried alive. Shikarabe agreed it was a good call to turn back early, especially while they still had plenty of ammo and energy reserves. He suggested they find a new route while they could. Elena nodded and urged the group to move quickly. Just then, Alpha chimed in, telling Akira to stop the others and advise them to take the shortest route possible. When Elena gave the order to proceed, Akira asked if he could have a word. Elena, curious, asked what was up. Akira explained that he wanted to check the rubble blocking the shortest route to checkpoint 19. He mentioned that the blockage hadn't been there earlier and that they needed to investigate it quickly. The entire group stared at Akira, puzzled as to why he would even suggest such a thing. Shikarabe, in particular, was taken aback when Elena surprisingly agreed to Akira's plan. She guessed it was urgent, and Akira confirmed her suspicion. Elena took the lead, but Shikarabe was still having a hard time accepting the situation. He needed an explanation, at least a reason why they were taking this detour. Elena, however, told him she'd explain later and reminded him that since he promised to follow her orders, he should either shut up or stay behind. With no other option, Shikarabe reluctantly followed, hoping he'd get some clarity soon. As they approached the shortest route, Alpha advised Akira to switch to his C.W.H. gear and mentioned he'd be glad his client was still paying for his ammo. Without hesitation, Akira dashed ahead with his C.W.H. in hand, asking Alpha if her hunch was correct. She confirmed it was. Sliding into position, Akira readied his rifle, aiming at the supposed debris blocking their path. Elena, confused, asked what he was doing. Akira shouted back that it wasn't just debris and fired. Instead of the rocks crumbling, the target started to bleed. Everyone was momentarily stunned. It turned out the Urata scorpions had disguised themselves as debris. The scorpions lunged at Akira, catching him off guard, but his teammates quickly reacted, drawing their weapons and providing backup. Working together, they fought off the scorpions, dispatching them with relative ease. After the fight, Akira turned to Elena and insisted they needed to hurry back to checkpoint 19, or at least get close enough to make contact. At worst, they could already be surrounded, and Akira wanted to break through before the scorpions dug in for a full assault. Elena agreed and instructed Sarah and Shikarabe to take the point. She explained that they should expect Urata scorpions to be lurking everywhere due to the significant changes in the terrain. They were tasked with dispersing any scorpions they encountered while Elena and Akira would match their pace but keep moving quickly. Elena told Akira he would guard the rear and urged them to get moving. Sarah reminded Akira to keep a watchful eye on their backs, while Shikarabe mused that this task was definitely better than searching for an exit. As they proceeded, a swarm of Urata scorpions emerged, just as they had anticipated. Elena instructed Sarah to look up. As Sarah glanced skyward, a fresh wave of Urata scorpions lunged at them. Without hesitation, Sarah aimed her machine gun upwards and fired, showing off her remarkable ability to manage recoil. Elena then alerted Shikarabe to a new swarm of scorpions in front of him. He fired at the incoming threat, expecting another swarm, but was instead met by a massive Urata scorpion charging toward him. Shikarabe fought back, firing at the monster, but it kept closing in. In a last-ditch effort, Shikarabe kicked the giant scorpion, causing it to crash into a nearby swarm. This unexpected move left Akira amazed. Alpha reminded him to stop gawking and contribute. Akira felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if he had faced a similar situation just yesterday. Alpha noted that if he recognized the pattern, he should already know how to handle it, adding that, unlike yesterday, retreat was an option. Though the passage was slightly wider, Akira questioned whether that made things easier or harder and urged Alpha to decide quickly. Alpha assured him that there wasn't much difference, meaning he could come out on top as he had before. Akira smiled, pleased to hear that, and Shikarabe noticed his grin. Impressed by Akira's capabilities, Shikarabe wondered why his instincts still told him Akira was nothing special. He considered that his experiences with Katsuya's team might have made him less impressed with younger hunters. If that was the case, he'd need to keep an eye on Akira. Elena then tried to contact Checkpoint 19, which responded and inquired about their status. Elena confirmed they were on their way back and reported they had just fought a large swarm of scorpions, which likely came from a major nest. She advised them to be cautious in case the scorpions followed. Checkpoint 19 acknowledged the warning, and with that, Elena told the team they were clear to relax and head back at their own pace. With her reassurance, they safely made it back to Checkpoint 19. Back at the checkpoint, Akira explained to Shikarabe that he had previously encountered scorpions disguised as rubble and suspected this might be what blocked the tunnel. Then Shikarabe asked what if he got it wrong, to which Akira answered that he'd have been relieved they had one less thing to worry about. But if that happened, the others would think less of him, which Akira knew already and apologized. But if he lets him down, he can always complain to HQ and have him replaced. Shikarabe then asked if that was really his only reason. He just wanted to make sure and didn't care if he's wrong. That's not how Akira looks to Shikarabe. But Akira doesn't know what to tell him, as he only followed his own instinct. If he puts it like that, Shikarabe can't argue with that. But well, he was right, so who cares? Shikarabe then apologized to Elena and asked if it's alright to clock out now since he still had a report to write. Elena agreed to his request and bid farewell to him. As Shikarabe walked away, Shiori called him out, wishing to ask something and asking to have a few moments of his time. Shikarabe glanced at Shiori, who had Reina and Katsuya's team with her. He told her to make it quick, as he was busier than he looked. Shiori assured him she'd be brief and asked for his opinion on Mr. Akira. Shikarabe inquired if she hoped he'd say he preferred Katsuya's team instead. Shiori admitted, somewhat embarrassed, that she had made a mistake by arguing with Mr. Akira the previous day. To avoid a repeat of her blunder, she wanted an accurate assessment of his abilities. Shikarabe advised her to avoid doing anything foolish, and she wouldn't have to worry. However, Shiori revealed that she had underestimated Akira's capabilities, which piqued Shikarabe's interest. He told her that while Akira wasn't on his level, he managed to pull his weight. That was his take after observing Akira in action and asked if that was sufficient for Shiori. Shiori said that a variety of circumstances led Shikarabe to take Mr. Akira with him rather than Mr. Katsuya. If he were to judge purely based on their individual competency, would he have made a different decision? Shiori asked. Shikarabe told her that his instincts tell him that Katsuya is stronger, and he'll admit he's skilled. If there's nothing else, he doesn't want her making too much of his answer, so he'll leave it at that. Shiori then bowed slightly and thanked him. Shikarabe then looks at Katsuya. His instincts are still telling him that Katsuya is stronger than Akira, but could Katsuya have done what he did out there? As Shiori returned to her team, Reina asked what she had discussed with Shikarabe. Shiori explained that she had asked a few questions about Mr. Akira, who had taken their place on the recon team. Apparently, Akira had performed adequately without hindering his teammates. Katsuya then inquired if Shikarabe had said anything else. Shiori relayed Shikarabe's remarks. My instincts tell me Katsuya is stronger, and he's skilled, if nothing else. Shiori agreed with this assessment. Katsuya was pleased and thanked her, which Reina noted. If Katsuya was stronger than Akira, he must be impressive. Katsuya was somewhat embarrassed by this. Shiori, meanwhile, watched Akira talking with Elena and Sarah. Elena was astonished that Akira found the reconnaissance challenging since he made it look effortless. Akira disagreed, explaining that he was barely managing and wasn't ready for recon yet. Elena and Sarah exchanged glances. Elena then sarcastically suggested that as the leader of Recon Team 9, she could report Akira as ineffective, which might get him reassigned to security. To her surprise, Akira eagerly agreed, stunning both Elena and Sarah. Elena asked if he was certain, noting that he could earn more working in reconnaissance or extermination, which would also look better on his resume. Akira shrugged, saying he didn't mind. Elena was astonished, as most people would want a better report than they deserved. Akira must have been quite an anomaly. Akira, in turn, was surprised, suggesting that many people must have a death wish, including Elena and Sarah, which made things a bit awkward. With that, they said their goodbyes and departed. On the third day of Yurata Scorpion extermination, the scene shifted back to the underground, where many hunters were preparing for the ongoing battle. Alpha informed Akira that he had landed the security job he wanted. Akira replied that Elena must have come through for him. As he looked around, Akira found it surprising that so many hunters were involved in setting up new lighting. Alpha explained that the lights also functioned as scanners. If the scorpions tunneled through a wall again, the lights would detect them. She further explained that relics discovered deeper in the tunnels had proven surprisingly valuable, which was why the city had become serious about retrieving them. Understanding this, Akira carried one of the lights and felt reassured that installing them would ensure safety, so he had nothing to worry about. While installing one of the lights, Akira sighed. He then asked Alpha about the other hunters who were supposed to join him. To his surprise, Alpha warned him to stay alert. Immediately, Akira asked if something was wrong. Alpha pointed to a section of the tunnel where the lights had not yet been installed and indicated a suspicious armed individual in that direction. Akira questioned what was unusual about another hunter being down there since everyone carried guns. Alpha explained that their terminals tracked each other's locations, which Akira already knew. He asked what the issue was. Alpha replied that the person in question was not transmitting any data. Their terminal might be broken, disabled deliberately, or they might not have a terminal at all. She asked Akira if he was willing to bet it was just a malfunction. Akira wondered if the individual wanted to remain undetected. Alpha provided him with an AR view. In the distance, a man is visible with the help of Alpha's AR. The man in question doesn't have any lights on him to install, which made it even clearer to Akira that something was amiss. Akira reported to HQ that he had found someone he suspected to be a hunter, but he couldn't share location data and asked what he should do. HQ asked if he was certain. Akira replied that they didn't have to believe him but should at least advise him on what to do. HQ agreed and suggested that it might be a terminal malfunction. They told him to investigate. Akira inquired what he should do if it wasn't a malfunction. HQ instructed him to bring the individual to HQ if possible. If the person resisted, he had permission to use any means necessary. Regardless of the outcome, he was to report back as the situation developed. Akira understood and sighed, feeling that what he thought would be a simple task was turning into a problem. Alpha reminded him that HQ had authorized him to use lethal force if necessary and advised him not to hesitate if the situation escalated. Hoping he was just imagining things, Akira asked Alpha to back him up if anything went wrong. Alpha reassured him that he was in good hands. Akira took a deep breath and shouted that his terminal wasn't responding and asked if it might be broken, indicating it could be dangerous. The man turned towards him with a strange smile. The man seemed shocked to learn his terminal wasn't working and attempted to fix it, which confused Akira. The man pointed at his terminal, leading Akira to conclude that the man was trying to indicate a malfunction. Akira glanced at Alpha, who remained unperturbed. The man then stepped forward and walked toward Akira. Akira quickly raised his rifle, causing the man to panic and raise his hands. The man continued to advance toward Akira with his hands raised in the air. Akira glanced at Alpha again, but she seemed untroubled. Lowering his rifle, Akira noticed the man sighed with relief. As the man got closer, Akira watched his every move, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The man pointed at his terminal, holding it up in the air. Akira followed his gaze, but suddenly the man's other hand reached for his pistol and fired at Akira. Stunned, Akira was even more surprised that he managed to dodge the bullet. He quickly fired back at the man. Breathing heavily and shaken by the unexpected attack, Akira lost his composure. Alpha called out to him, snapping him back to reality. Instinctively, Akira slid into cover. In pain, Akira groaned. Alpha asked if he was all right. Slumped against the wall, Akira replied that he was, and Alpha explained that she had used his suit to move him and reassured him that his bones weren't broken. Akira apologized for not moving sooner. Alpha reassured him that it was fine and reminded him that having his back during situations like this was part of his job. Akira remembered this and asked Alpha about their current situation. Alpha reported that the enemy was skilled, and their gear and training seemed tailored for killing humans rather than monsters. Although Alpha used Akira's suit to return fire, the enemy remained unharmed. It seemed the enemy had chosen their firing position with the expectation that they might fail to kill Akira. Akira noticed that his terminal had been damaged and was now inoperable, which meant they couldn't contact HQ. He was frustrated, wondering why someone would go to such lengths to target him. What was a person like that doing down here? Resolute, Akira asked Alpha if he could defeat the enemy. Alpha confidently assured him that he could. She added that the moment the enemy's sneak attack failed, their luck had run out, which lifted Akira's spirits. Alpha instructed Akira to take some recovery capsules, the expensive ones. When Akira questioned if the cheaper ones would suffice, Alpha sarcastically responded that they might, provided he didn't mind having his limbs torn off. Agreeing to the cost, Akira noted that while his stock of old-world medicines was running low, saving them wouldn't help if he were dead. After taking a few capsules, Alpha informed him that it was time for a counterattack and asked if he was ready. With his rifle prepared, Akira affirmed that he was ready to finish this confrontation with the unknown enemy. Meanwhile, Yajima, the man hiding behind a pillar, was confident that he had caught Akira off guard. However, he was puzzled by Akira's impressive reflexes. What was someone of Akira's level doing there? Yajima speculated that Akira might be a municipal agent. Had the city caught onto their plan and sent a cyborg operative disguised as a child? Regardless, Yajima needed to eliminate this threat quickly. He contacted his team, instructing them to adjust their plan and hurry to complete the tunnel to the surface. He warned them that the city might be closing in and promised to provide details later. He also requested backup from Kane and Nelia. He told his team to stop complaining since they knew they were risking a fight with the city when they decided to rob the ruins. They needed to move the relics quickly before the scanner lights were installed. Yujima hung up, reflecting on how smoothly their plan had been going. His team had infiltrated the security, hidden the loot, and only needed to extract the relics before the lights were operational. To achieve this, he needed to deal with Akira permanently. Peeking from behind the pillar, Yujima saw Akira aiming his rifle at him and preparing to shoot. Akira pointed his rifle at the pillar, with Alpha assisting him through AR to pinpoint the enemy's location, acting like a thermal scope. With the target in sight, Akira fired at the pillar, causing it to tremble under the impact. Though the pillar was taking a beating, it remained standing. Akira knew he needed to keep firing until he forced Yujima out into the open. With Alpha's help, Akira could track Yujima's movements, regardless of where he went. Yujima, however, shouted for him to stop shooting. He claimed he could explain the situation and apologized for mistaking Akira for an enemy. Akira's resolve didn't falter. He questioned why Yujima was trying to deceive him now. Yujima persisted with his smooth talk, asserting that he was a hunter from the recon team and suggested that Akira call HQ if he doubted him. Despite Yujima's attempts to clear things up, Akira continued firing at the pillar. His armor-piercing rounds should have been enough to penetrate walls, but the old-world construction proved resilient. Alpha informed Akira that the pillar couldn't withstand much more and encouraged him to keep firing. As the pillar began to show signs of giving way, because of Akira's action, not giving him a chance to surrender or even try to capture him alive, Yujima begins to wonder if Akira is really a city agent. Yujima guessed that if Akira could take down an old-world pillar, he must be using some kind of anti-material ammunition, possibly proprietary, CWH, rounds. Yujima was uncertain why Akira had such high-caliber firepower but recognized that the oversized rifle was a key detail. Knowing this, Yujima decided that killing Akira would buy him plenty of time. As Akira continued to aim his rifle, Akira anticipated that the next shot would break through the pillar. Unexpectedly, Yujima kicked the pillar, causing it to collapse. The falling debris flew toward Akira too quickly for him to react, leaving him stunned as he watched Yujima aim his pistol at him. Yujima's plan was to exploit the bulkiness of Akira's rifle, ensuring that Akira couldn't adjust his aim in time. He intended to finish Akira off before he had a chance to shoot. To Yujima's surprise, Akira had already switched weapons in the brief moment of chaos. Both men fired simultaneously, and as the pillar crumbled, debris and dust scattered everywhere. Yujima found a large rock for cover, still grappling with the fact that Akira had managed to switch guns so quickly. He questioned who this opponent really was. Despite thinking he had caught Akira off guard again, Akira had evaded the attack and returned fire with surprising efficiency. Also, the look at his face. He seems shocked, but he reacted immediately. How can his actions be so out of sync with his expression? Could it be that he's the same as him? Meanwhile, Akira also found a rock for cover and asked Alpha for a status update. She explained that the AH rounds hadn't caused significant damage and apologized for the inconvenience. Given that Yujima shrugged off high-pressure ammunition, Akira realized that his adversary was anything but ordinary. Akira aimed at the rock where Yujima was hiding, but the ancient construction proved too sturdy for his rounds to penetrate. Yujima took a mental note of Akira's unnervingly precise aim and guessed that Akira must be using a top-tier scanner. Combined with the CWH ammunition, Akira was clearly over-equipped for this area. This realization hit Yujima hard. Did Akira anticipate needing all this firepower? If so, did he know about them? The thought made Yujima break out in a cold sweat. Although Yujima was reluctant to use that, he saw no other option. He tossed something toward Akira, and it released a dense smoke. As the smoke spread, Alpha's AR support, which had been pinpointing Yujima's location, vanished. Alpha explained that the jamming smoke was interfering with the scanner's performance. If that were true, Akira should be unable to see Yujima either. Akira suspected that Yujima might be planning to make a run for it. Alpha clarified that jamming smoke can be formulated to leave specific tracking methods relatively unaffected. If Yujima's scanner was calibrated to work with his smoke, he could still track Akira nearly as well as before. This meant Akira couldn't see Yujima, but Yujima could still see him. Alpha's prediction proved accurate. Yujima's scanner detected Akira's position, and he began to move while Akira continued firing, destroying everything he thought might provide cover. Since Akira was blind to Yujima's position due to the smoke, Yujima could circle around to Akira's rear, making it nearly impossible for Akira to hit him, even with a lucky shot. Yujima carefully executed his plan, but then reconsidered. He reminded himself to stay calm and not rush things. He had twice thought he had Akira cornered, only to be outmaneuvered. But this time, with his plan, he was certain he would win. He knew he needed to strike as Akira fired. No, as Akira pulled the trigger. With Akira wielding an oversized rifle, it would be a liability at close range. If Yujima could close in an attack point blank, he could end this swiftly. With his enhanced ammunition, Yujima could blow Akira's brains out, even if they were heavily armored. As Yujima prepared to lunge toward Akira, ready to fire, he was shocked to find that his entire right hand was blown away, like paper consumed by flames. Yujima was not only stunned but in complete shock. He was sure Akira had lost track of him, so how did he know Yujima was behind him? The answer was simpler than it seemed. Alpha could see Yujima through the smoke. Reversing the jamming effect was child's play for her. While Akira's right hand ached from the recoil, Yujima's right hand was in even worse shape, having been blown off. Akira realized Yujima was a cyborg. He asked Alpha if they had defeated him. Alpha cautioned against celebrating too soon. Alpha explained that while they had neutralized his arm and pistol, effectively disarming him, Akira should finish him off with a headshot if he wanted to be sure. Akira asked why Alpha didn't aim for his head in the first place, and Alpha answered that it's for safety, since his cyborg body could have been operated remotely. Puppets like that don't always die from decapitation, so she prioritized disarming him first. Akira then asked how she figured out that he wasn't a human. Alpha answered that she got her biggest clue when he first met him. He was too good at lying with his face. To explain it further, she can see through most lies by analyzing changes in expression or tone of voice. Then Akira asked why she didn't warn him when he was about to get shot, and Alpha answered that it's because she also got fooled. Nothing in his expression suggested falsehood, but he was lying. In other words, he can completely decouple his face from his thoughts, and this level of control is only possible for cyborgs and androids. With her explanation, Akira finally gets it now. With that finish, Alpha then told Akira to decide what to do with him now. Akira agreed, but the pain in his right arm still hurts, but he still continued forward. As he approached Yujima closely with his rifle ready, Yujima thought about his next move. He has turned down his pain receptors, but he still lost a lot of output in his torso. Fighting Akira would be too risky for him. He wonders if he should buy time until his backup arrives, as Akira continues to approach Yujima cautiously. Yujima begged him to stop. He told Akira that he already beat him, so he begged him not to shoot. Akira then asked why he attacked him, to which he answered that it's just a misunderstanding. He begged Akira to hear him out, as it'll all make sense if he listens. Akira then asked Alpha if he's telling the truth. She answered that he really doesn't want to get shot, but his pleading is all just an act. Though he does want Akira to listen, he's lying about the misunderstanding. He's either trying to fool him or to buy time. This made Akira angry to think that he would stall for his allies to come. While glaring, Akira asked him how much time he still needs to save his skin. Yujima continued his act and disagreed about the stalling. He explained that it's nothing like that and begged him to believe him, as he's not lying. But with Alpha telling Akira that it's a lie, he can't fool him. Akira thinks about it. Since the HQ told Akira to bring Yujima alive if he could, Akira decided that he might as well take him alive now, since they can probably learn a lot from him if they get him alive. If that's what Akira wants, Alpha told him that blasting his remaining limbs off will be more safe, which Akira agreed. His right arm then aches, which pains him. Alpha asked if he's hurt and told him that firing the CWH one-handed must have been too much for him and advised him to take plenty of medicine. As Akira put the last batch of his old world medicines, he cursed that it's his last batch already. Alpha told him that he just needed to live without it. He just needs to be more extra cautious from now on to not need it. With his injury becoming bearable, Akira readied his rifle. Yujima stared at him. He knew that Akira wouldn't kill him outright, as he would shoot off his arms and legs before he could even move, which is thoughtful. If Akira brings him to the HQ, he's done for. Now what's his next move, he wonders. Then a shout came out of nowhere asking what's going on. It was Reina and Shiori. Akira thought that they were the backup he was waiting for. Alpha told him that it looked like it. She wishes they'd arrived earlier, ideally while they were fighting. As Akira stared at them, Shijima knew in one glance that they all know each other, but they're not friends. He smiles because he's willing to bet that Akira is probably thinking that the situation is hard to explain, and he's worried they might not believe his story. And so, having these thoughts in mind, he knew he had to take this opportunity, and shouted that Akira was trying to kill him. Yujima's bullet zipped towards Akira, who was probably wishing he'd brought a bigger umbrella. Meanwhile, Cheryl's necklace, a gift from Akira, snapped with a pop. She panicked, convinced it meant Akira was in deep trouble. This necklace broke more often than a politician's promises, so Ario and Aricia were practically on speed dial for repairs. Two kids, probably bored and looking for a little excitement, were hanging out in a dingy alley. Heard there's a gang of kids, one whispered, think they'd let us join. They decided to find out, which is how they ended up face to face with Ario, two kids holding rifles, and a whole lot of attitude. We wanna join, they squeaked, bowing awkwardly. Ario, ever the diplomat, knocked on a door behind him. Boss, what do you think? He asked, and the kids practically fainted at the thought of meeting the fearsome leader. The door swung open with a bang, revealing Cheryl in a bright yellow uniform, her face a mask of sternness. Strength in numbers, she declared dramatically, holding up a sandwich board that read, Cheryl's Sandwiches, get your grub on. The kids, momentarily stunned, realized they'd stumbled into the most unlikely gang ever.